Welcome to AudioFi. This audiobook has been thoughtfully created using research-backed principles from psychology, neuroscience, and personal development. Every chapter is designed to help you understand yourself better, think clearer, and grow stronger from the inside out. So, find a quiet space, sit back, and allow yourself to absorb these transformative ideas. Listen with an open mind and a ready heart, because the change you seek may just begin with this very moment. Are you tired of sharing your big dreams only to watch them die in the conversation? That excitement you felt when you announced your new business, your fitness transformation, your bold move? You thought sharing would create accountability, but it actually killed your motivation. Your brain got the dopamine hit from talking instead of doing. While you were getting praised for your intentions, successful people were working in silence. This isn't about being secretive or antisocial. This is about understanding that your dreams are too important to die in conversation. They don't need to know your plan. Chapter 1. Recognize your dreams. Die the moment you share them. Every time you tell someone about your big plan, you're literally killing your chances of success. Your brain thinks talking is doing. While you're getting praised for your intentions, successful people are working in silence. This isn't some mystical concept. This is psychology. This is neuroscience. This is how your brain actually works. When you share your goals, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, the same chemical reward you'd get from actually achieving the goal. So your brain thinks you've already done the work. It thinks you've already succeeded. You feel good about yourself, you feel productive, you feel accomplished. But you haven't done anything yet. You just talked. And that talking just robbed you of the psychological pressure you need to actually execute. Because pressure is what drives action. Discomfort is what creates urgency. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is what forces you to move. But when you share your dreams, you close that gap artificially. You get the social validation. You get the encouragement. You get people telling you how amazing your idea is. And suddenly the pressure is gone. The urgency disappears. The discomfort that would have pushed you to take action gets replaced with the comfort of other people's approval. So you stop working. You stop executing. You stop doing the uncomfortable things that would actually get you where you want to go. Because you already got what you were really looking for: recognition, attention, validation. You weren't sharing your dreams to get advice. You weren't sharing them to get help. You were sharing them to get praised for having them. And praise is addictive. It's easier to get than results. It's faster than progress. It's more comfortable than the actual work. So you become addicted to talking about your plans instead of executing them. You become addicted to the reactions instead of the results. You become addicted to being seen as someone who has big dreams instead of being someone who achieves them. And every time you share a new goal, every time you announce a new plan, every time you broadcast your next move, you're choosing the temporary high of attention over the permanent satisfaction of achievement. Most people never realize this. They think sharing their goals creates accountability. They think telling people about their dreams creates support. They think announcing their plans creates momentum. But that's not what happens. What happens is they get a bunch of fake encouragement from people who don't really care about their success. They get surface-level support from people who will forget about their goals by tomorrow. They get momentum that lasts exactly as long as the conversation does. And then they wonder why they never follow through. They wonder why they start so many things and finish so few. They wonder why they're full of ideas but empty of results. It's because they're getting their reward from the wrong place. They're getting their satisfaction from sharing instead of succeeding. They're getting their dopamine from dreaming instead of doing. Successful people understand this. They know that talking about their plans dilutes their power. They know that sharing their strategies gives away their competitive advantage. They know that announcing their moves invites unnecessary opinions, unsolicited advice, and unwanted interference. So they work in silence. They build in private. They execute without explanation. They don't need anyone to know what they're working on. They don't need anyone to validate their vision. They don't need anyone to cheer them on while they're grinding. They get their satisfaction from the work itself. They get their validation from the results. They get their dopamine hit from crossing finish lines, not starting lines. And when they finally reveal what they've been building, people are shocked. People ask where it came from. People want to know how they did it so fast, so quietly, so effectively. The answer is simple. They never told anyone what they were doing. While everyone else was talking about their plans, they were executing theirs. While everyone else was getting praised for their intentions, they were getting paid for their results. While everyone else was sharing their dreams, they were living theirs. This is why they don't need to know your plan. Not because they're not trustworthy. Not because they don't care about you. But because knowing your plan doesn't help them, and it definitely doesn't help you. When you keep your plans to yourself, you maintain the psychological tension necessary for action. You preserve the energy you would have wasted explaining yourself. You protect your vision from being diluted by other people's doubts and limitations. You force yourself to be accountable to results, not reactions. You commit to execution, not explanation. You focus on building, not broadcasting. And here's what happens when you stop sharing your plans. You realize how much energy you were wasting on conversations that didn't matter. How much focus you were losing to opinions that didn't help. How much momentum you were sacrificing for validation that didn't last. You realize that the most powerful position is the position no one sees coming. The most effective strategy is the strategy no one knows exists. The most dangerous competitor is the one no one knows is competing. This isn't about being secretive or antisocial. This isn't about cutting people out of your life or refusing to communicate. This is about understanding the difference between sharing for connection and sharing for validation. Share your successes. Share your lessons. Share your experiences after you've lived them. But keep your plans to yourself until they become results. Because your dreams are too important to die in conversation. Your goals are too valuable to waste on validation. Your future is too precious to trade for temporary praise. But keeping your plans private is just the beginning. Because right now, you're still seeking permission from people who can't give you what you want. Chapter 2. Stop asking for permission you don't need. You're asking your broke friends for financial advice. You're asking unhappy people about relationships. You're asking people who never took risks about your dreams. Stop asking for permission from people who can't give you what you want. This is one of the most destructive patterns in people who stay stuck. They're constantly seeking approval from people who have no authority to give it. They're asking for validation from people who have no experience to offer it. And it's killing their potential. Because every time you ask someone for their opinion on your life, you're essentially asking them to set the boundaries for what's possible for you. You're inviting them to project their fears onto your future. You're giving them the power to limit your growth with their limitations. And most people will use that power, not because they're evil, not because they hate you, but because they can only see as far as their own experience allows them to see. When you ask broke people for financial advice, they'll tell you money doesn't matter. They'll tell you to be grateful for what you have. They'll tell you that rich people are greedy or lucky or corrupt. Because that's the story they need to tell themselves to feel better about being broke. When you ask unhappy people about relationships, they'll tell you that all partners cheat. They'll tell you that love doesn't last and commitment is impossible. They'll tell you to lower your standards and settle for less. Because that's the story they need to tell themselves to feel better about being alone. When you ask people who never took risks about your dreams, they'll tell you to be realistic. They'll tell you it's too competitive. They'll tell you that most businesses fail and most dreams don't come true. Because that's the story they need to tell themselves to feel better about playing it safe. They're not giving you advice. They're giving you their excuses. They're not sharing wisdom. They're sharing their wounds. They're not protecting you from failure. They're protecting themselves from feeling left behind. And you're letting them do it. You're giving them permission to set the limits on your life. You're allowing their fears to become your barriers. You're accepting their can't as your won't. But here's the truth. You don't need their permission. You don't need your parents' permission to chase your dreams. You don't need your friends' permission to want more. You don't need your partner's permission to bet on yourself. You don't need society's permission to break the rules. You're an adult. You get to decide what you do with your life. You get to choose what risks you take. You get to determine what success looks like for you. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that other people's comfort with your choices mattered more than your own satisfaction with your results. You started seeking consensus instead of following conviction. You started prioritizing approval over achievement. You started choosing safety over significance. And now you're stuck in other people's expectations, stuck in other people's limitations, stuck in other people's version of what your life should look like. Think about the most successful people you know, the ones who actually built something, the ones who actually achieved something, the ones who actually created the life they wanted. Did they ask for permission? Did they wait for approval? Did they seek consensus before they made their move? Number, they saw what they wanted. They made a plan to get it. They executed that plan regardless of what other people thought about it. They didn't ask their family if they should start a business. They started it. They didn't ask their friends if they should move to a new city. They moved. They didn't ask their coworkers if they should quit their job. They quit. They understood something that most people never learn. Asking for permission is just a way of avoiding responsibility for your own choices. When you ask someone else what you should do, you're trying to make them responsible for the outcome. If it works, you can share the credit. If it doesn't, you can share the blame. But that's not how success works. Success requires you to take full ownership of your decisions, full accountability for your results, full responsibility for your life. And you can't do that while you're constantly seeking other people's approval for your choices. Because approval seeking is fear-based thinking. It's the belief that other people know better than you do what's right for your life. It's the assumption that their opinion matters more than your intuition. But they don't know what you know. They don't feel what you feel. They don't want what you want. They don't have to live with the consequences of your choices. You do. So why are you giving them the power to make those choices for you? The permission you're seeking doesn't exist anyway. There's no authority figure who can guarantee your success. There's no expert who can promise your plan will work. There's no mentor who can eliminate your risk. All you have is your own judgment, your own courage, your own willingness to take action without certainty. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because it's all anyone has ever had. The most successful people in history didn't have permission. They just had determination. They didn't have guarantees. They just had goals. They didn't have approval. They just had ambition. And they moved forward anyway. Because they understood that the permission they were seeking was always theirs to give. Just like yours is yours to give. Stop asking for it. Start giving it to yourself. They don't need to know your plan, and you don't need their permission to execute it. But even after you stop seeking permission, you'll face another danger, because your competition is watching everything you post, waiting for you to give away your secrets. Chapter 3. Understand your competition is watching everything you post. While you're posting your business ideas on Instagram, someone smarter is stealing them and executing them better. Your competition isn't your friend. They're studying your every move, waiting for you to slip up. And you're making it easy for them. Every time you post about your new strategy, you're giving away your competitive advantage. Every time you share your business insights, you're training your competition. Every time you broadcast your next move, you're telegraphing your punches to people who want to knock you out. You think you're building a personal brand. You think you're creating awareness. You think you're positioning yourself as an expert. But what you're actually doing is showing your hand before you play it. And smart people are watching. Smart people are taking notes. Smart people are seeing what works for you and implementing it faster, better, cheaper. While you're busy creating content about your process, they're busy perfecting theirs. While you're explaining your methods, they're executing them. While you're teaching your secrets, they're using them against you. This isn't paranoia. This is business reality. Your competition studies you more carefully than your customers do. They know your pricing better than your friends do. They understand your strategy better than your family does. Because they have skin in the game. Because they're playing the same game you're playing. Because they want what you want, and they're willing to take it from you. And you're helping them do it. Every post is market research for them. Every story is intelligence gathering. Every live video is a masterclass they didn't have to pay for. You're giving them access to your thinking, your planning, your mistakes, your discoveries. You're showing them what works and what doesn't. You're revealing your strengths and exposing your weaknesses. And they're using all of it. They see you struggling with customer acquisition, so they invest more in marketing. They see you celebrating a big win, so they study what you did and do it better. They see you pivoting your strategy, so they avoid your mistakes and optimize your discoveries. You're essentially consulting for your competition for free. You're doing their market research, their product development, their strategic planning. And they're not even following you because they like you. They're following you because you're useful. Meanwhile, the most successful people in your industry are ghosts online. They're not posting daily updates about their business. They're not sharing behind-the-scenes content. They're not live streaming their strategy sessions. They're working, they're building, they're executing. And by the time you see what they've built, it's too late to compete with it. Because they understood something you don't. Information is power, and power shared is power lost. When you broadcast your moves, you lose the element of surprise. When you share your strategies, you lose your competitive advantage. When you teach your methods, you lose your uniqueness. You become just another person doing what everyone else is doing, because everyone else learned how to do it from watching you. This is especially true in the early stages of building something, when you're still figuring things out, still testing ideas, still making mistakes. This is when you need silence the most. This is when you need to protect your experiments from becoming other people's certainties. This is when you need to keep your failures private so they don't become other people's warnings. This is when you need to work in the dark so you can emerge in the light. But instead, you document everything. You share every insight. You post every milestone. You turn your private journey into public entertainment. And your competition loves it. They love that you're so transparent. They love that you're so sharing. They love that you're so generous with information that could give them the edge they need to beat you. Because while you're building your personal brand, they're building their business. While you're growing your following, they're growing their revenue. While you're creating content, they're creating results. And here's the thing about social media. It's not a business strategy. It's a distraction from business strategy. Every minute you spend crafting the perfect post is a minute you're not spending perfecting your product. Every hour you spend engaging with comments is an hour you're not spending engaging with customers. Every day you spend thinking about content is a day you're not thinking about competitive advantage. You're optimizing for likes instead of results. You're measuring success by engagement instead of revenue. You're building an audience instead of building a business. And your competition is building while you're broadcasting. They're making moves while you're making content. They're gaining market share while you're gaining followers. They're creating value while you're creating posts. Because they understand that the most powerful position is the position no one sees coming. The most effective strategy is the one no one knows exists. The most dangerous competitor is the one no one knows is competing. So stop giving away your secrets. Stop sharing your strategies. Stop broadcasting your moves. Work in silence. Build in private. Execute without explanation. Let your competition study your results, not your process. Let them learn from your success, not your struggle. Let them see your finished product, not your rough drafts. Because the moment you reveal how you think, you give them the ability to think like you. The moment you show how you work, you give them the ability to work like you. The moment you share what you know, you give them the ability to know what you know. And once they know what you know, you're no longer unique. You're no longer special. You're no longer irreplaceable. You become just another person in a crowded market competing on price instead of innovation, on volume instead of value, on noise instead of results. Your competition doesn't need to know your plan. They don't need access to your process. They don't deserve insight into your strategy. What they need is to be surprised by your success. What they deserve is to be outworked by your silence. What they should get is the shock of seeing what you built while they were busy watching what you posted. Keep them guessing. Keep them wondering. Keep them studying your results instead of stealing your methods, because the best competitive advantage is the one your competition doesn't know you have. But it's not just your competition watching. You're also trapped by a different kind of performance, one that's keeping you broke while making you look successful. Chapter 4. Recognize fake it. Till you make it is keeping you broke. You're spending money. You don't have to impress people who don't care. While the person you're trying to become can't afford the life you're pretending to live, stop performing success and start building it. This fake it till you make it mentality has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. Because at least failure teaches you something. Faking success just teaches you how to waste money and live in denial. You're buying clothes you can't afford to look successful at events that don't matter. You're leasing cars that drain your bank account to create an image that fools no one. You're renting offices you don't need to impress clients you don't have. And while you're busy performing success, successful people are busy building it. They're driving used cars and investing the difference. They're wearing the same outfit twice and buying assets instead. They're working from home and putting money into their business instead of their image. Because they understand something you don't. Broke people focus on looking rich. Rich people focus on building wealth. Broke people buy things to look successful. Rich people buy things that make them successful. Broke people care what other people think about their lifestyle. Rich people care what their bank account says about their choices. You're playing the wrong game. You're optimizing for perception instead of reality. You're building an image instead of building an empire. And image is expensive. Image requires constant maintenance. Image needs ongoing investment just to stay believable. Real success is different. Real success compounds. Real success grows even when you're not performing it. Real success doesn't need costumes or props or stages. But you've been convinced that you need to look the part before you can play the part. You've been told that success is about confidence, and confidence comes from looking successful. That's backwards thinking. That's broke thinking. That's the thinking that keeps people broke while they look rich. Confidence doesn't come from wearing expensive clothes. Confidence comes from knowing you can afford expensive clothes, but choosing to buy assets instead. Confidence doesn't come from driving a luxury car. Confidence comes from having the money to buy 3 luxury cars, but deciding to invest it in your future instead. Confidence doesn't come from looking successful. Confidence comes from being successful enough that you don't need to look like anything. Because here's what nobody tells you about faking it. It's exhausting, it's stressful, it's unsustainable. You're constantly worried about maintaining the image. Constantly stressed about affording the lifestyle, constantly anxious about being exposed as someone who's pretending. You can't enjoy the things you're buying because you know you can't afford them. You can't relax in the environment you've created because you know it's built on debt. You can't be proud of what you've accomplished because you know you haven't accomplished anything. You've just gotten really good at spending money. You don't have to impress people who aren't paying attention. And the worst part is, while you're faking success, you're missing the opportunity to build real success. Every dollar you spend on image is a dollar you don't have for investment. Every hour you spend maintaining your fake lifestyle is an hour you're not spending building your real business. Every mental calorie you burn worrying about perception is a calorie you can't use for execution. You're sabotaging your future to perform in the present. You're sacrificing what you could become to pretend to be what you're not. And successful people can see right through it. They know the difference between someone who has money and someone who spends money. They know the difference between confidence and compensation. They know the difference between success and the performance of success. They can spot fake success from a mile away because they remember what it was like to build real success. They remember the sacrifices, the investments, the delayed gratification. They remember choosing substance over image, reality over perception, building over buying. So when they see you performing success instead of building it, they don't think you're successful. They think you're insecure. They don't think you're confident. They think you're compensating. They don't think you're rich. They think you're broke and trying to hide it. And they're right, because real success doesn't need to be performed. Real wealth doesn't need to be displayed. Real confidence doesn't need to be proven. Real success is quiet. It's understated. It's secure enough to be simple. Real successful people wear the same shirt multiple times. They drive reliable cars until they die. They live in houses they can afford, not houses that impress their neighbors. They understand that every dollar spent on image is a dollar not spent on impact. Every investment in looking successful is an investment not made in being successful. They choose assets over appearances. They choose building over buying. They choose wealth over the performance of wealth. So stop faking it. Stop performing it. Stop pretending you've made it when you're still trying to make it. Use that money to build something real. Use that energy to create something valuable. Use that time to develop something meaningful. Because the person you're trying to become can't afford the life you're pretending to live. And the life you're pretending to live is preventing you from becoming the person you're trying to be. Stop spending your future to impress your present. Stop trading your potential for perception. Stop choosing image over impact. Build first, buy later. Create value before you display wealth. Because success that has to be performed isn't success at all. It's just expensive insecurity dressed up in designer clothes. But the performance pressure doesn't just come from trying to look successful. It also comes from the people closest to you, who need you to stay predictable. Chapter 5. Understand your family will be your first haters. The same people who raised you to dream big will be the first ones to tell you to be realistic when you actually start chasing those dreams. Your family loves you, but they also need you predictable. And that creates a problem when you decide to grow. Because growth is unpredictable. Change is uncomfortable. Success makes people feel left behind. And family members hate feeling left behind more than anyone else. They want you to succeed, but not too much. They want you to do well, but not better than them. They want you to be happy, but not so happy that it makes them question their own choices. So when you start making moves, they'll try to slow you down. When you start taking risks, they'll remind you of the dangers. When you start dreaming bigger, they'll tell you to be grateful for what you have. Not because they don't love you, but because they do love you. And they love the version of you they understand, the version they can predict, the version that makes them feel comfortable about their own life choices. Your success is a mirror that reflects their missed opportunities. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your risk-taking exposes their playing it safe. And instead of being inspired by your courage, they feel threatened by it. Instead of being motivated by your progress, they feel judged by it. Instead of celebrating your wins, they worry about what those wins say about their losses. So they'll disguise their fear as concern. They'll package their insecurity as advice. They'll present their limitations as wisdom. They'll tell you about all the people who tried what you're trying and failed. They'll remind you of all the reasons it won't work. They'll list all the ways you could get hurt. And they'll do it with love in their hearts, thinking they're protecting you, thinking they're being helpful, thinking they're keeping you safe. But what they're really doing is trying to keep you small. What they're really protecting is their own comfort zone. What they're really keeping safe is their own worldview. Because if you succeed at something they never tried, it means they could have tried it too. If you break out of the limitations they accepted, it means those limitations weren't as real as they thought. If you achieve something they gave up on, it means they gave up too early. And that's painful for them to face. It's easier to convince you that success isn't possible than to confront the fact that they never really tried to achieve it. It's easier to tell you to be realistic than to admit they were afraid to be unrealistic. It's easier to warn you about failure than to acknowledge they were too scared to risk it. This doesn't make them bad people. This makes them human people. People who have their own fears, their own regrets, their own defense mechanisms. But it also makes them dangerous to your dreams. Because their fears can become your barriers. Their regrets can become your excuses. Their defense mechanisms can become your limitations. And family influence is the strongest influence. It's the voice you've heard longest. It's the opinion that matters most. It's the approval you've always sought. So, when family members express doubt about your plans, it hits different than when strangers do it. When they warn you about risks, you listen more carefully. When they suggest you slow down, you consider it more seriously. Because these are people who know you, people who raised you, people who have your best interests at heart. But knowing you also means knowing your weaknesses. Raising you also means investing in who you used to be. Having your best interests at heart also means defining what those interests should be. And sometimes their definition of your best interests is keeping you exactly where you are. Sometimes their vision of your future is a safer, smaller version of what you're actually capable of. They'll use their knowledge of your past failures to predict your future ones. They'll use their understanding of your personality to explain why certain things aren't right for you. They'll use their love for you to justify limiting you. And if you're not careful, you'll let them. You'll let their fears become your reality. You'll let their comfort zone become your prison. You'll let their definition of realistic become your ceiling. But here's what you need to understand. Their love for you doesn't make their limitations true for you. Their concern for your safety doesn't make your dreams dangerous. Their comfort with your current life doesn't mean you have to be comfortable with it too. You get to want more than they wanted. You get to risk more than they risked. You get to dream bigger than they dreamed. And you don't need their permission to do it. You don't need their understanding to pursue it. You don't need their approval to achieve it. What you need is the courage to disappoint them in the short term so you can make them proud in the long term. The strength to be misunderstood while you're growing so you can be celebrated when you've grown. Because the same family members who tell you to be realistic today will take credit for your success tomorrow. The same people who warn you about risks will brag about your achievements. The same voices that try to slow you down will claim they always believed in you. And that's okay. That's human nature. That's how families work. But don't let their current fear stop your future success. Don't let their present comfort prevent your growth. Don't let their love for who you are now stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. Love them, respect them, honor them, but don't let them limit you. Because they don't need to understand your plan for it to work. They don't need to approve of your choices for them to be right. They don't need to believe in your dream for you to achieve it. Your family will be your first haters. But they'll also be your loudest cheerleaders once you prove them wrong. But family pressure isn't the only trap. You're also creating artificial pressure by announcing timelines that have nothing to do with actual success. Chapter 6. Accept that success has no timeline you need to announce. You posted about your 90-day transformation, your new business launch, your big move. Now you're stressed behind schedule and making desperate moves because everyone's watching. Success doesn't need a countdown timer, but you gave it one anyway. You put yourself on a public clock. You turned your private journey into a public performance. You created artificial deadlines for real dreams. And now you're trapped by your own announcements. You're making decisions based on what you said you would do by when you said you would do it, instead of making decisions based on what's actually best for your success. You're rushing processes that need time. You're skipping steps that matter. You're cutting corners to meet deadlines that were never real to begin with. Because the timeline you announced wasn't based on reality. It was based on what sounded good, what looked impressive. What would get the most engagement? You picked 90 days because it sounded achievable. You chose 6 months because it felt reasonable. You selected 1 year because it seemed ambitious but realistic. But you didn't pick those timelines based on what success actually requires. You picked them based on what your audience would find believable and inspiring. And now you're paying the price for that performance. You're stressed because you're behind your own arbitrary schedule. You're anxious because people are watching and waiting. You're making bad decisions because you're more committed to your timeline than your success. You're choosing speed over quality. You're choosing deadlines over excellence. You're choosing announcements over achievements. Meanwhile, successful people work on timelines nobody knows about. They set deadlines nobody sees. They create schedules nobody follows except them. They understand that success has its own timeline, that meaningful achievements take as long as they take, that rushing toward arbitrary deadlines often means arriving at mediocre results. They work for years without announcing anything. They build for months without updating anyone. They grind for seasons without sharing progress. Because they're not performing their journey. They're living it. They're not entertaining their audience. They're serving their goals. When they're ready to launch, they launch. When they've built something worth sharing, they share it. When they've achieved something worth celebrating, they celebrate it. But they don't announce the timeline. They don't broadcast the deadline. They don't create artificial pressure by making private goals public promises. Because pressure is already built into the goal. The pressure to succeed, the pressure to improve, the pressure to grow. That's enough pressure. That's the right kind of pressure. The pressure you created by announcing your timeline is different. It's performance pressure. It's social pressure. It's the pressure to look good rather than be good. And that pressure makes you make bad decisions. It makes you rush when you should be patient. It makes you public when you should be private. It makes you focused on deadlines when you should be focused on quality. You start compromising your standards to meet your schedule. You start settling for less to deliver on time. You start prioritizing consistency of updates over consistency of progress. You become more worried about what people will think if you're late than what you'll achieve if you take your time. But success doesn't care about your social media schedule. Excellence doesn't respect your arbitrary deadlines. Quality doesn't rush to meet your announced timeline. Real achievement takes as long as it takes. Real progress moves at the speed of reality, not the speed of expectations. Sometimes that means taking longer than you hoped. Sometimes that means moving faster than you planned. Sometimes that means changing direction completely. But when you've announced your timeline, you've limited your flexibility. You've locked yourself into a path that might not be the best path. You've committed to a schedule that might not serve your success. You've made your timeline more important than your results, your announcements more sacred than your achievements, your promises to your audience more binding than your commitment to excellence. And that's backwards. That's why announced timelines kill more dreams than they create. Because dreams need space to breathe. Goals need room to evolve. Success needs permission to take its time. When you announce a timeline, you steal that space. You remove that room. You revoke that permission. You turn your journey into a performance, your growth into entertainment, your success into content. And content has deadlines. Entertainment has schedules. Performances have curtain calls. But success? Success has its own timeline. Success knows how long it needs. Success doesn't care what you promised your followers. So stop announcing your timelines. Stop broadcasting your deadlines. Stop turning your private progress into public promises. Work as long as it takes. Build until it's ready. Grow at the pace that serves your goals, not your audience. Let your timeline be between you and your success. Let your deadlines be private agreements with your potential. Let your schedule serve your dreams, not your content calendar. Because the most successful people you know didn't announce when they would succeed. They just worked until they did. And when they finally revealed what they'd built, nobody cared how long it took. They only cared how good it was. That's the timeline that matters. That's the deadline worth meeting. That's the schedule worth keeping. The one that delivers results, not updates. The one that creates value, not content. The one that builds success, not just the appearance of progress. Success has no timeline you need to announce. It only has a timeline you need to respect. And that timeline is, no matter how long it takes to get it right. Get it right. But even worse than announcing timelines is trying to network your way to success when you have nothing valuable to offer. Chapter 7. Stop networking and start delivering value. You're at every networking event with your elevator pitch ready. But you're still broke and unknown. While you're trying to get something from everyone, successful people are giving something to the right people. You think networking is about collecting business cards. You think it's about making connections. You think it's about meeting the right people who can open doors for you. You're wrong. That's beggar thinking. That's the thinking that keeps you hustling at happy hours instead of building at home. Real networking isn't about what you can get. It's about what you can give. And you have nothing to give, because you haven't built anything worth sharing yet. You show up to events looking for mentors. You scan the room for investors. You hunt for partners and opportunities. You practice your pitch about what you need, what you're looking for, what you want someone to do for you. You're making yourself a target, a means to an end, someone whose only value is what they can do for you. Meanwhile, successful people show up looking for problems they can solve. They scan the room for people they can help. They listen for opportunities to add value, to share resources, to make connections for others. They understand something you don't. People remember how you made them feel, not what you said you could do for them. When you approach someone asking for something, you make them feel used. When you approach someone offering something, you make them feel valued. The difference in response is dramatic, because everyone is trying to get something from successful people. Everyone wants their time, their money, their connections, their endorsement. Everyone is pitching them, asking them, begging them. But almost no one is trying to give them something. Almost no one is thinking about their problems, their challenges, their needs. Almost no one is showing up to serve instead of sell. So when you flip the script, you stand out immediately. When you ask what you can do for them instead of what they can do for you, you capture their attention. When you offer value before you ask for anything, you earn their respect. But here's your problem. You can't offer value because you haven't created any value yet. You're trying to network before you have anything to network with. You're trying to connect before you have anything to connect about. You're trying to give before you have anything to give. You can't solve other people's problems if you haven't solved your own problems first. You can't add value to successful people's businesses if you haven't built a successful business yourself. You can't offer valuable insights if you don't have valuable experience. So you end up offering things that don't matter. Surface-level help, generic advice, superficial connections. You offer to do social media for free. You offer to make introductions to people who don't matter. You offer insights from articles you read instead of businesses you built. And successful people can see right through it. They can tell the difference between someone who has value to offer and someone who's pretending to have value to offer. Real value is rare. Real expertise is scarce. Real results are uncommon. When you have those things, you don't need to network. People network with you. You don't need to chase connections. Connections chase you. You don't need to ask for meetings. People ask to meet with you because you've become someone worth knowing instead of someone trying to know someone. You've built something worth talking about. Instead of talking about what you want to build, you've achieved something worth sharing. Instead of sharing what you hope to achieve. And that changes everything about how networking works for you. Instead of going to events hoping to meet someone who can change your life, you go to events where people hope to meet you. Instead of pitching your needs, people pitch their solutions to your problems. Instead of asking for favors, people offer them. But getting there requires you to stop networking and start building. Stop connecting and start creating. Stop meeting people and start becoming someone worth meeting. Because the most powerful network isn't the network you collect. It's the network that collects around you. When you're delivering real value, people find you. When you're solving real problems, people seek you out. When you're creating real results, people want to connect with you. The right people. The people who matter. The people who can actually help you get where you want to go. And they don't find you because you pitched them. They find you because you performed. They don't connect with you because you asked them to. They connect with you because you proved you were worth connecting with. This is why successful people don't go to networking events. They don't need to. They're too busy building things that make people want to network with them. They're creating products that solve problems. They're building companies that create jobs. They're developing expertise that adds value. They're generating results that speak for themselves. And while they're building, you're networking about what you wish you were building. So stop trying to get something from everyone. Stop asking successful people what they can do for you. Stop pitching your needs to people who have their own needs. Start building something worth talking about. Start solving problems worth solving. Start creating value worth sharing. Then you won't need to network. The network will need you, because value attracts opportunity. Results attract relationships. Success attracts support. And when you have those things, you don't need business cards. You don't need elevator pitches. You don't need networking events. You just need to keep doing what you're doing and let the right people find their way to you. But you're still trying to find your way to one specific person, the mentor you think you need. And you're about to learn they don't even know you exist. Chapter 8. Stop asking for mentorship and start earning it. You keep DMing successful people asking for coffee meetings and advice. They're ignoring you because they already gave you everything you need. It's in their content, their interviews, their results. Stop asking and start studying. You think you need a mentor who knows your name, who answers your questions, who guides your decisions. Someone who takes a personal interest in your success and invests their time in your growth. You're wrong. You're not looking for a mentor. You're looking for a shortcut. You're looking for someone to hold your hand because you're too lazy to do the work yourself. You want personalized advice because you haven't bothered to consume the hundreds of hours of public advice they've already given. You want a 15-minute call to solve a problem they already solved in a book you were too lazy to read. You want them to repeat themselves directly to you because you think you're special. You're not special. You're just another person asking for a handout. While you're begging for access, successful people are busy studying. They understand that real mentorship isn't a relationship, it's a robbery. You study the people ahead of you, you steal their strategies, you reverse engineer their success, and you apply it relentlessly. Warren Buffett didn't slide into Benjamin Graham's DMs. He devoured his books. Steve Jobs didn't ask Sony's executives for a quick chat. He studied their products until he understood them better than they did. They didn't ask for permission to learn. They took the information that was already there. And the information you need is already there. The most successful people are constantly documenting their journey. Every interview is a lesson. Every article is a strategy session. Every product launch is a case study. They've already given you the entire blueprint. But instead of studying it, you're in their inbox asking them to read it to you. You're not asking for mentorship. You're asking them to do your homework for you. And they see right through it. They know you haven't done the work. They know you haven't watched the interviews, read the books, or studied their history. Because if you had, your questions would be smarter. Or better yet, you wouldn't have any questions because you'd be too busy executing. Every time you ask a question that's already been answered in public, you're not showing initiative. You're showing disrespect for their time. You're proving you're not the kind of person who finds answers, but the kind who needs them spoon-fed. And nobody successful has time to spoon-feed a stranger. You think a personal relationship is the key, but that's just another form of hiding. You want a mentor to give you accountability because you refuse to be accountable to yourself. You want their validation before you're willing to take a risk. You want their certainty before you're willing to face your own doubt. But that's not how it works. You don't get the mentor and then become successful. You become successful. And then people on your level become your mentors organically. So stop asking. Stop begging. Stop waiting for a personal invitation to learn what's already public knowledge. Disappear into their work. Become a ghost who studies their every move. Learn from what they do, not what you wish they would say to you in a private conversation. The mentor you're looking for has already given you everything you need to succeed. They're just waiting to see if you have the discipline to actually use it. Your mentor doesn't know you exist. And that's perfect, because it forces you to become a student, not a dependent. It forces you to build, not to ask. It forces you to earn your success, not to be given a map to it. Start earning it. You've learned to build your skills in silence, to study without seeking attention. But you're still performing in the one area that demands the most silence of all, because while you're learning to work quietly, you're still trying to look rich. Chapter 9. Stop performing wealth and start building it. You're the loudest person in the room, and that's why you're still broke. You're posting pictures of your leased car and your rented vacation while millionaires are driving 10-year-old Toyotas and quietly buying another rental property. You think wealth is the designer logo on your shirt. You think it's the fancy restaurant on your Instagram story. You think it's the performance of success. But what you're actually performing is your own financial insecurity. You're not fooling anyone. Real wealth is silent. It's invisible. It doesn't need an audience because it's too busy compounding in the dark. But you've been tricked. You've bought into the broke person's definition of success. You're chasing the symbols of wealth instead of the substance. You're buying liabilities to impress strangers instead of buying assets to create freedom. Let's be clear. Every dollar you spend making yourself look rich is a dollar you can't use to become rich. That car payment you're so proud of, that's an investment property you don't own. That expensive watch on your wrist, that's a stock portfolio you don't have. That night out you had to post about, that's capital you can't inject into your business. You're literally trading your future freedom for a few likes from people who are just as broke as you are. Successful people see you coming from a mile away. They don't see your leased BMW and think you're one of them. They see you and think you're a sucker. They know you're playing a game they already won by refusing to play it in the first place. They remember what building real wealth felt like. It felt like sacrifice. It felt like driving a crappy car so they could buy an asset. It felt like living in a small apartment so they could save for a down payment. It felt like being invisible. You're not invisible. You're desperate to be seen. You're spending your potential on a performance. And the only people applauding are the ones who don't know any better. Rich people aren't impressed by your spending. They're impressed by your earning, your saving, your investing. They don't care what car you drive. They care what assets you own. You're optimizing for the wrong metric. You're measuring your success by your lifestyle instead of your balance sheet. And your lifestyle is eating your future. Real wealth builders are boring. Their Instagrams would be spreadsheets. Their weekends are spent analyzing deals, not brunches. They get a bigger thrill from a dividend payment than from a designer purchase. They're not trying to look rich. They're trying to become free. And freedom doesn't need to flex. You're trapped in a cycle of performing for an audience that doesn't matter, spending money you don't have, to maintain an image that is actively preventing you from achieving the reality you claim to want. Stop it. Disappear. Get your finances so quiet that the only thing making noise is the sound of your assets growing. Live like you're broke until you've built enough wealth to never be broke again. Drive the boring car. Wear the simple clothes. Live below your means so aggressively that you can invest the difference into a future that doesn't require a performance. Because the freedom you're looking for isn't in the things you can show off. It's in the assets you own that nobody knows about. Money moves in silence. Wealth whispers. It's time for you to shut up and start listening. You finally understand that real wealth is built in silence. And now it's time to apply that same principle to everything else. To stop talking, stop announcing, and finally let your results do all the talking for you. Chapter 10. Let your results do the talking. When you're actually successful, you don't need to tell anyone. They can see it. They can feel it. Your presence speaks louder than your promises ever could. This is what happens when you finally learn to move in silence. You stop talking about what you're going to do. You stop announcing what you're working on. You stop broadcasting your plans and your progress and your potential. You just work. You just build. You just execute. And then, one day people notice. They notice that something has changed. They notice that you've changed. They notice that you've become someone different, someone more capable, someone more successful. But they didn't see it happening. They didn't watch it unfold. They didn't follow along with your journey. Because you didn't share your journey. You lived it. You didn't document your struggle. You endured it. You didn't broadcast your growth. You experienced it. You didn't perform your transformation. You underwent it. And now, the results are undeniable. The success is obvious. The achievement is clear, not because you told them about it, but because they can see it for themselves. There's something different about people who have actually done something significant. Something different about people who have actually built something meaningful. something different about people who have actually achieved something real. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth. They don't need to prove their value. They don't need to explain their success. Their success explains itself. It's in the way they carry themselves. Not arrogant, but confident. Not boastful, but certain. Not loud, but commanding. It's in the way they speak. Not about what they're going to do, but about what they've already done. Not about their plans, but about their results. Not about their potential, but about their performance. It's in the way people respond to them, with respect instead of skepticism, with interest instead of indifference, with attention instead of dismissal, because results create respect. Achievement commands attention. Success speaks its own language, and that language doesn't need translation. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't need amplification. It's immediately recognizable to everyone who encounters it. People can sense when someone has actually done something significant. They can feel the difference between someone who talks about success and someone who embodies it. They can detect the difference between potential and performance. And they respond differently. They listen differently. They treat you differently. Not because you demanded different treatment, but because you earned it. Not because you asked for respect, but because you commanded it. Not because you claimed to be successful, but because you became successful. This is the power of moving in silence. This is the result of working without announcing. This is what happens when you let your results do the talking. You become undeniable. You become obvious. You become impossible to ignore, not through promotion, but through performance. Not through marketing, but through mastery. Not through promises, but through proof. And the proof speaks for itself. When you walk into a room, people notice, not because you announced your arrival, but because your presence announces itself. Not because you demanded attention, but because your energy attracts it. Not because you told them who you are, but because they can sense what you've become. This is what successful people understand that unsuccessful people don't. The most powerful communication is not verbal. It's not what you say about yourself. It's what you've done with yourself. It's the confidence that comes from having tested yourself and succeeded. The certainty that comes from having set goals and achieved them. The authority that comes from having built something real and valuable. That authority doesn't need to be asserted. That certainty doesn't need to be declared. That confidence doesn't need to be performed. It just is. And it speaks without words. People can sense immediately whether someone has actually accomplished something or just talks about accomplishing something. Whether someone has real experience or just theoretical knowledge. Whether someone has built something meaningful or just plans to build something meaningful. The difference is palpable. The difference is obvious. The difference is undeniable, and you can't fake it. You can't perform it. You can't simulate the presence that comes from real achievement. You can fake confidence, but you can't fake competence. You can perform success, but you can't perform the calm certainty that comes from having actually succeeded. You can simulate achievement, but you can't simulate the quiet power that comes from having actually achieved something significant. That power comes from within, from knowing what you've overcome, from understanding what you've built, from experiencing what you've achieved, and it translates into everything you do, every conversation you have, every room you enter, every relationship you build. People treat you differently because you are different, not because you told them you were different, but because they can feel that you're different. And the beautiful thing about this transformation is that it happens gradually. Then, suddenly, you work in silence for months or years, building something meaningful, creating something valuable, achieving something significant. And then, all at once, people notice. All at once, things change. All at once, your results start speaking louder than your words ever could. Opportunities begin appearing. People begin approaching you instead of you approaching them. Resources begin flowing toward you instead of away from you. Not because you asked for these things, but because you earned them. Not because you demanded recognition, but because you deserved it. Not because you promoted yourself, but because your results promoted you. This is the ultimate power of silence, the ultimate result of discipline, the ultimate reward of execution. You become someone whose presence speaks volumes, whose results tell the story, whose achievements do all the talking that needs to be done. And you never have to explain yourself again. You never have to convince anyone of your worth again. You never have to prove your value again. Because your value proves itself. Your worth demonstrates itself. Your success speaks for itself. This is what happens when you finally stop talking and start doing. When you stop announcing and start achieving. When you stop promising and start performing. Your results become your voice. Your achievements become your advertisement. Your success becomes your story. And that story doesn't need to be told. It just needs to be lived. Because when you're actually successful, the whole world becomes your witness. And witnesses don't need explanations. They just need evidence. And your life becomes the evidence that speaks louder than any words ever could. If something in this audiobook connected with you, even in a small way, we'd love to hear from you. What resonated most? What are you working on in your own journey? Your thoughts, your story, they truly matter here. Your feedback not only helps us create better content, but it could inspire someone else who's listening right now. So go ahead, drop a comment below, and share something real. We're listening, and we're growing together.